So welcome to the SignPost Podcast. I'm here with my wife, Carrie Coleman, and I'm Tom Coleman. And we are here to talk about politics. Does that sound like a fun subject?
It sounds like a subject that everybody's talking about lately.
I know, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who doesn't want to talk about politics?
I'm sure there's many, but they don't have a choice, really.
I know.
Nothing else to talk about.
That's what we live and breathe every morning.
Yeah.
Basically.
Pretty much. And what we eat before we go to bed.
Wake up, what's on the phone, go to bed, what's on the phone, Twitter. Well, we don't do Facebook right now, but how long can we do that for until they get a better platform?
Yeah.
We'll see how that goes. So first thing of business in Michigan is the Senate hearings that went on.
Yeah, let's talk about those.
Yeah, we had Chris Shornack was a good friend of ours who was a from what I understand, a star witness in that case. So,
if anybody saw that, it would have been the first day of the Michigan committee, which was the Senate hearing.
Yep.
That was the Senate Oversight Committee.
Yep.
And Chris Shornack was the one that said, "Remember my name, Chris Shornack. Remember my name, Chris Shornack.
Say my name. Don't
Say
forget
my
it.
name. Don't forget it. Remember me."
He's all over Twitter now.
Yeah.
Famous.
He is.
So, yeah, they testified. Really, Giuliani wasn't there, but so they had all the witnesses come in. For most of the people that probably didn't see it on mainstream news, OAN is a good news source, Newsmax, right? Is it Right Side?
Right Side.
Right Side?
Right Side Broadcasting.
Yeah. So, yeah, those went, I think the Senate hearings went better than the House hearings.
Oh, the House hearings were a circus. They were a circus. But, yeah, the Senate hearing went okay. They went through a lot of witnesses. And I would say the Senate conducted it in a pretty good way. It didn't get really out of hand like day 2 did.
Right.
Wasn't too much of an embarrassment. However, there were a lot of senators that day. There were a few. I wouldn't say a lot. There were a few that day that really tried to debunk everything that the witnesses had to say.
Right.
They had something to say against it.
Right. Chris had a strong testimony. He was actually
very strong.
Actually, a poll watcher down at the TCF Center testified that he probably witnessed 8,000 ballots on his watch that ran through the machines without that. Actually, they weren't on the voter rolls, which either you have to be a registered voter in the system or there was a supplemental list, which, if they weren't on either of those lists, I think they considered them a spoiled ballot. So they actually were unverified. So he actually saw,
So they sampled 30,000 votes.
No, I'm not talking, not the study that they did after the election. I'm talking about on the day of the election. That was one of his testimonies that, actually that was in a video that he did. Yeah. So the testimony.
His testimony was about his 30,000.
Yep, the 30,000 votes they did, and then they turned out it was actually 8.9% of the 30,000 votes in Detroit City were uncertifiable, and I forget the percentage of that 8.9%.
Well, what were the discrepancies in that 30,000 that they found that would disqualify those votes?
There was a small percentage of them that were dead.
Okay, and so they were deceased.
Yeah, but then the rest of them had voted twice. Like they had 8 or 9 ballots sent to an existing, like the same address, like an apartment building, and they all had come back.
Well, there was also, I remember him saying that they actually went out to verify the addresses of these places, and they were either abandoned houses, vacant property or land, like where there was no dwelling at all. So they did do that as far as verifying the addresses of these people and things like that, which I thought was very interesting because obviously it was a completely fake vote.
Right.
It had to be a fake person, if the house is completely abandoned, burned down.
Well, right, yeah.
Or there's not even a dwelling place on it.
Right.
So
how can those votes count? They say every vote count. those are not legal votes.
No, right. That's why we hear so much the legal vote. You know, we want all legal votes counted.
Right.
Because there are illegal votes.
Yeah, so almost 9% of that 30,000, and there's roughly, I think, 265 to 270,000 people voted in Detroit City. Trump got around 12,000 votes, and then Biden got around 250,000. I forget the number if you extrapolate that number out.
I was just going to say extrapolate that.
And it's 9% is a lot. 10%. I mean, if you got, you know, 1 million voters, almost 10% is 100,000 votes.
Right.
I mean, Arizona, you know, were lost by small margins.
Right.
Michigan was one of the bigger ones where it's 150,000 margin or difference. So.
And the ones that he did, the 30,000, was that just in Detroit or was that Wayne County?
No, that was just Detroit.
Okay, so that was just Detroit. Imagine, you know, Detroit's big, but Wayne County's bigger, obviously.
Yeah.
And I mean, imagine if we actually went out and verified addresses and names of all these places or all the residents.
Well, what's 10% of? Wayne County's got about 1.7 million people that live there. I think the registered voter count is like 1.4 million, 1.3.
In Wayne County?
Yeah, Wayne County. So almost 10% of that, because you know, they found a 9% discrepancy.
It'd be 170,000 votes, and
boom,
100.
There's the election turnover, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, no one can deny that.
But there was fraud in Oakland County too.
Right, fraud over almost everywhere.
Right.
In most of the counties.
And it's not voter fraud, right? It's
election fraud.
Election fraud.
Yeah, because it was basically an organized. You know,
what's the difference? I mean, so many people are like voter
fraud would be where you, the individual voter, take it upon yourself to, you know, lie. Where election fraud, from what I understand, is where you've got these organizations, you've got clerks involved, supervisors, elected officials, representatives, governors, you know, Secretary of State. So you've got all them organized in there. Right.
You have Governor Whitmer, you have Dana Nessel, the Attorney General, and you have Jocelyn Benson, the Secretary of State. All three of them involved with this.
So, we had other witnesses. Chris.
You can't forget Melissa Carone. She was a Twitter superstar. People loved her.
She was pretty forward. She was subcontracted by Dominion.
Yes, she was.
So she worked for SCC company. She was basically a subcontractor.
And she said that she was supposed to park at this warehouse, and her mom told her not to. She said, absolutely not. Don't park at the warehouse and be driven over. I guess her mom just didn't think it was safe for her. But and she said, thank goodness she didn't, because that's where all this stuff was going on. And I thought to myself, no, man, I really wish you were there, because then you would even have an even better testimony to what was going on in this Chicago warehouse.
Right. So, yeah. She testified in the following day, too, in the House.
She did. Now, I just want to say, with the House hearing, Campanelli,
he's a representative. So the House hearing, those were all representatives.
So when that started out, that was just immediately, I knew it was going to be going downhill. It was totally embarrassing. You know, when he's like, Mr. Giuliani, stand up, and then you have the other guy
he doesn't even know the rules, right?
Right. That was embarrassing. But I do want to say, I was a little disappointed in not just how our state reps handled it, but Rudy Giuliani with the witnesses. The first one, man, that was, you know, bless that woman's heart. And I feel bad that I don't remember her name. Her name was Jessie. Jessie was her first name, and she was an Indian woman, and she was very, very, very nervous. But I mean, the testimony was just so drawn out and long that I felt like it took away from the testimony. You know, that even the reps were like, you're going to have to move along your other witnesses, you know, because it was like pulling teeth. But I know that Rudy Giuliani, he wanted to be wanted to be respectful and kind, and he even said he felt bad if he were to interrupt her or something.
Right. She testified for an hour.
Yes.
I think
and Melissa Carone came up next, and then she started out the same way. So, and it's like, oh my word, just spit it out.
Right.
We're going to be here all night. Let's get through these other witnesses. Now, why didn't Chris testify? Did he say? Did you even ask him?
No, I don't know why.
You didn't ask him? Because his was a powerful testimony.
Maybe he couldn't be there.
Maybe. But you said that you got some people, or he has reps and senators calling him because they thought his testimony was really powerful.
Right.
Which is
Senator. Well, I'm not going to name any names.
No.
Because we don't want to give away who's working together. But yeah, he's got a lot of good information.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's powerful.
Right.
What we talked about with the 30,000 that they did.
So what were the other witnesses? Did anybody stand out on the first day?
Yeah, there were a few.
So I want to go back to the Indian lady's testimony. Even though it was long, listening to it was difficult. Mm-hmm. But when you look at the evidence on paper, you've got somebody recording all that. And if you read it in a transcript, a lot of the information, if you just basically closed your eyes and listened to her, she had a very good testimony. Mm-hmm. And so did what's her name? Carone?
Yeah.
Cerrone?
Melissa Carone.
Carone, yeah. So Cerrone. So if you go back to the following day, House hearings that basically opened up with I forget his name, the chairman. I wish I wrote his name down. Matt something. He was a representative.
Hall?
Is it Matt Hall?
I think it was Hall.
A good memory. Where he's banging the gavel. And what a joke. We're going to show a little clip of that right now. And for all the people that didn't get to watch it, it's pretty entertaining. And at the same time, it's a little embarrassing. So
it's very embarrassing because no other committee in Pennsylvania, Arizona, or I don't know, Georgia, I don't know if they show those, none of them acted as embarrassing and as childish and as like...
Yeah, it was bad.
It was
but here's the clip. We'll take a look at it.
All right.
I'd like to welcome up Mr. Giuliani and Jenna Ellis, the attorneys for President Trump. Yeah, wherever. That's right. There's one there, and I think there's wherever you want to sit. There's
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman. Mr.
Yes.
Chairman. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Hold on. Do you have a point of order?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chairman.
What's your point of order?
I would like to ask Mr. Giuliani to please stand and raise your right hand
not a point of
to
order.
please be sworn before this committee. Mr. Chairman.
Please stop.
Mr.
That is
Chairman.
out of line. You're out of order.
Mr. Chairman, it is...
You have a point of order.
Yes, I do, Mr. Chairman.
What's your point of order?
Under the law, I have the right before this committee as a representative to swear any witness before this committee to uphold the law. That is my right. It's my right as a representative.
Let's continue.
Mr. Chair, I appeal the rule of the chair.
So what a great clip. Wow. What do you think about that?
I thought that was embarrassing.
It's terrible.
And that must have happened, like, I think somebody put on Twitter about 45 times that guy was banging his gavel at the other committee members.
Yep.
And there were people on Twitter saying, if I was a resident in Michigan, I would be so embarrassed right now. And I'm like,
it was embarrassing. You had people on Twitter saying, "Oh, what a people in Michigan, your legislature is horrible," and it was just an absolute embarrassment. If you watched,
they called it, like, people were saying Michigan is an absolute beep hole,
right?
Right. And I'm like,
yeah. If you watch Georgia, Arizona, they were all. I mean, they prayed. They were talking scripture, in their closings. It was.
They were professional too.
Right. Very professional.
Looked very professional.
They
conducted themselves as such. Ours, on the other hand, that Representative Johnson from
C.A.
Detroit,
Johnson, yeah.
C.A. Johnson, yes. People were like, that woman's drunk.
Right.
She's up there drunk. And she did say at one point, the guy holding the committee chair, head of it,
Matt Hall,
he said,
forgive us if we are getting it wrong.
He said Now, the radical lefts, he was talking about something, and he referred to the radical leftists. And you could hear her say, I'm right here. And I'm like, way to call yourself out.
Right.
And this is it. If you look at the way that whole committee was conducted, they proved Rudy Giuliani's point when he said Michigan is the most corrupt out of all of the states. Michigan is the most corrupt. And their behavior didn't help them.
Right.
It proved it.
Right.
I believe. You act like that, you prove you are a corrupt circus show of a government.
Right. Well, he said that, he made a list. He said, Michigan, if you Google it, or maybe it was New York, his hometown. New York would have been like, number 4, number 6, number 7. I don't think he didn't say as a whole the city was the most corrupt. He mentioned it during the voting because they basically picked a handful of cities that they thought were, pretty corrupt. Because I didn't want to say that. He said that Detroit was the most corrupt. Did he say that?
No, he said it was around number 4 on the list.
So,
but he said it was the most corrupt in regards to the voter fraud.
Exactly right. And he said
Georgia, the election fraud.
Election fraud, right.
The election fraud.
You said Georgia was the most blatant, so just obvious, careless.
So it doesn't mean that they were the most, they were the most corrupt.
Right.
We were the most corrupt, but they were the most blatant.
Blatantly corrupt, right. Yeah. Or they basically, they're pulling suitcases out from underneath the tables, swapping out hard drives or USB sticks, right on camera. So
I think another really good testimony would have been, I believe the guy's name was Sito was his last name, but he sat there with the younger Indian woman and
right.
Then there was him. I forget his name. But their testimonies were powerful as well.
Right.
I really thought
they basically
those
all
ones
said the
were.
same thing. I mean, it's in the evidence that they put forth is basically in line with what's going on in the other states.
Right.
So you can tell it's it's an organized attempt. It's not just random cities. Oh, we're going to take it on ourselves. I mean, there's a lot more higher players involved. So the House. Yeah, that was a disaster, and it ended. I mean, the one lady, the C.A. Johnson, it was just. She wouldn't let up, and every time she would get a chance to speak, she would reference Matt Hall, Representative Hall, and he was like, "Do you have a question? Do you have a question?" She
wasn't talking to Rudy Giuliani and asking questions, but also that Caminelli. Forgive me if I'm saying his name wrong, but I don't really care if I am saying his name wrong because he was a loser. Straight up, he was a loser. He was embarrassing. He was immature, and he acted like a child, especially at the end when he said he went on his little rant, and then at the very end he said to Rudy Giuliani, "And isn't it true that you are looking for a pardon for
Trump?"
Yeah. From Trump,
which was completely out of line, and
that's when out of line.
Rudy Giuliani blew up and went on his rant, which was him. That's what they needed to hear. I mean,
and here's the thing. He said also, Rudy Giuliani said to the head chair, he said, "Are you going to reprimand him?
Right.
Is this the way that you conduct these things? And he basically was like didn't know what to say because
they have no idea.
They have no idea what they can and can't do. They have no idea.
The biggest thing that our government has or our state government has against them is they're the 4th highest paid legislature in the union out of all 50 states. You got California's number 1, New York's number 2, Pennsylvania's number 3, now, and then Michigan's number 4. So the average state representative and state senator makes around $72,000 a year. Pennsylvania's 87, and I think New York's like 95. California might be around 100 somewhere, give or take. But I think when you start taking these jobs and wanting to be a politician for the pay, it defeats the whole purpose. In my opinion, it's a complete conflict of interest. So what are the top 4 most corrupted states right now? California, New York, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Even though Pennsylvania, their governors, that's a whole nother show to talk about the governor there and the lieutenant governor. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's it was something to behold. And I encourage people to go on OAN and go on to
watch it.
Newsmax and
watch
and
some
watch
of the
it.
clips from it.
Right.
Even I
Yeah.
mean, it was
Because you're not going to find the real news on Fox. Fox is sold out.
mm-hmm.
Obviously NBC.
I don't even think they
ABC.
covered it. In fact, a lot of
terrible.
people didn't cover
It's
it.
terrible.
You're going to want to go to actually Right Side Broadcasting. They were the ones that were covering it.
Right.
I don't know if OAN was or not. Or actually, OAN was using the Right Side Broadcasting's feed.
Right.
They were using their broadcasting to broadcast it on.
Isn't that crazy that they didn't, that the regular media hacks weren't there? They don't even want to know about it.
Are we surprised?
They're in denial.
I'm not
Yeah.
surprised. Look at what happened on election night.
Right.
That was where they
Right.
they basically
Yeah. So,
tie their own
yeah,
nooses.
exactly. So you've got what we do have going for us in Michigan now is the forensic audits of there's 22 machines in Antrim County,
Mm-hmm.
which is it's over on the west side of the state.
Mm-hmm.
That came out, I don't know, a few days after the election, 3 days, where they had found that there was a 6,000 vote swing. So basically, that county went blue. After, so when they came out with all the results, you've got all these red counties up north, and then this county's blue.
Mm-hmm.
And what they found was that 3,000 votes had went to Biden that should have went to Trump. So when you have a misplaced amount of votes, even if it's 3,000,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to get a 6,000 vote swing in the other direction. Where
Right.
if they're, let's say you've got 100 votes and 20 of them are deceased, well, you're only able to take 20 votes away. It's not like a 40 vote swing. So, but I think today is when they were able to get, according to some information, on Giuliani from Giuliani's legal team.
Well, they did come out and say that 6,000 or those 6,000 votes that they at first they said it was because of the machine, and then they came back out and said, well, it was a clerical error.
Right, clerical error, right? Which hopefully
But I think the forensic audit is going to show that. I think this forensic audit will be able to show that it wasn't. But they said that they were able to give those votes back.
Well, no, they did. They even give them back to Trump, yeah. And then once they conducted the little, fix the error, the county was red. So Trump had won that county. But they're able to get today. They're doing an investigation. Basically, from what I understand, a forensic audit is they actually get the machine, they look inside the software, they test the machine. Let's say they run, 50 ballots through. 25 of them are for Trump, 25 of them are for Biden, and they basically record how this machine responds. And there's some articles online about, was it Georgia, where they did audits of these machines where they're running them through, and 25% of the Trump ballots were going to Biden. They had the way the software was counting.
Well, that must be a different one. The one I'm thinking about is they ran like equal number of ballots for Biden and equal number of ballots for Trump through the machine. So say it was like 50 for Trump, 50 for Biden. Once they were done, it showed 85% for Trump and 113 for Biden.
That's right.
It should be 100 and 100%.
That's right.
But they were taking 13%.
It's a 13%, right? And even in the testimony,
them over.
To back up to the witnesses in the Senate oversight, the first case in Michigan, the guy had figured out the algorithm of what they were using, and it's impossible to have that line move basically coming, basically Biden's coming from the bottom at a certain angle, and then Trump's coming down at a certain angle. The only way that's possible is to program the machine where for every vote that Biden got
perfectly
it's
in
impossible
sync like that.
It's a formula. Numbers never lie,
right?
Unless they're manipulated, but. In that case, they were basically recording the data and how it was coming out. So, pretty big deal.
That is a huge deal.
Yeah. So, people think, and we've got friends that hate Donald Trump, people that we think we're great people. I mean, we're not going to name any names. They know who they are. And,
you know who you are.
But we love you. We really do.
We do.
Great
and
people.
It's okay.
We just feel like, maybe you're misinformed, but it's not conspiracy theory. I mean, you've got evidence all over, but the biggest thing is that the media doesn't report on it.
Right.
it's so corrupt that they're not gonna give you the truth, and it's gonna come out. I mean, the media has been, bending left for a long time. I mean, we could give countless examples on how, on how they've kind of, hid the facts, hid the truth, and how they're behind, most of this. And it's really sad. They're not gonna. Well,
I think they've really led the charge on it. They've, as far as misinforming people, and I hate to say it's almost like a brainwashing, because like you and I, we never watched Fox News religiously. We never watched CNN religiously or MSNBC. We never watched that stuff religiously. So there wasn't we weren't really able to be brainwashed in a sense.
Right.
But I think that CNN and MSNBC, they have a way of brainwashing these people. Am I getting at out of it? Like, am I way off the mark here? But it just blows my mind how people are just mindlessly following and thinking, how can you say there's no voter fraud when less than a year ago you people were screaming that there was voter fraud in the election in 2016, and we did this whole impeachment thing with Russia and blah, 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 which turned out to be such a farce,
right.
And such a waste of time, a waste of money and stuff. So you want to say that there's no voter fraud, but yet you believe there was voter fraud before.
Right. Well, they beat that drum for 4 years when he won.
Right.
So there's no voter fraud. And the elections were corrupt, and China was involved, and Russia was involved.
And now all of a sudden, Biden wins, the Democrats win, and this was the most secure election ever.
Right.
Really?
Yeah.
Really.
That's a whole nother episode is the media and bringing out facts on them. So it's, the media, and I'm not going to go into details on articles I've seen about these hearings and about Rudy Giuliani's team, but they're on a discredit tour to basically, make them just look like a bunch of idiots. And if you're uneducated, I shouldn't say uneducated, if you're not attuned to what's going on.
To anything else, right.
Right. You're just it's just like it is. It's like a brainwashing. If you listen to it every day, like Adolf Hitler said, if you tell a lie long enough every single day, people believe it to be the truth. And you can't deny what he did. There's you can't erase that part of history.
Right.
So, was it Saturday? They had a protest at Jocelyn Benson's home.
Yeah.
I got a lot of good information on this, and I talked to our friend about that, Chris, and they had like 30 to 35 people. We watched the video. It was basically a live feed. I think we watched it yesterday, and it was filmed on Saturday.
Yeah. It had to have been. That's when it was.
So, Jocelyn Benson came out today with an article saying how they were armed and they were shouting obscenities, and they ended up leaving. In her statement today, she didn't say that they left before the cops got there, but that someone had posted either Gretchen Whitmer or the secretary say, I'm not sure who it was, but they're basically saying that, they left before the police got there. Well, we watched the video from start to finish. The cops were there.
They were there the whole time. They were
right.
They never left before the cops got there.
Yeah.
The cops were all there all over the place, and they were there with them for a long period of time,
But, those are the kind of things that when you make people uncomfortable like that, if you've got people, those are the things I would rather see. Like Chris said, 30 people go, make someone uncomfortable in their own neighborhood, in their own house for 30 minutes is way more effective than 3,000 people marching around the Capitol.
Where there's state cops all around. Those people may or may not be there. But once they know, oh no, they know where I live.
Right.
They know where I live. They could be watching me. It gets a little uneasy for them,
creepy,
little uncomfortable, Yeah, whatever. Go to my place of work. You want to?
Well, I'm not there and all the protests are on a
blah,
Saturday.
Blah, blah, whatever.
Right.
You know what I mean? But go to my house, and it gets a little uncomfortable.
Well, here's the deal. She's upset because they came to her house. Well, you're coming into our houses. You're taking jobs away. You're taking my kids' sports away. You're taking our freedoms away.
You're taking my vote away?
Right. Yeah, taking our vote away, yeah. And that'll be found out.
Right.
But it's so hypocritical.
Right.
The whole thing is.
It is.
So Jocelyn Benson, she's not happy about all that. But you're an elected.
We're not happy either.
Yeah, you're
not
official.
Listening to us, because not only are they not listening to us about this audit, because isn't the audit in her hands now? It's up to her to approve and to start this forensic audit, correct?
She has some control over. I'm not sure exactly what.
Because it's not just this. How many thousands of people?
Oh yeah.
With the Unlock Michigan signed that petition.
600 and some thousand votes, and they're just sitting on.
I thought it was 540,000.
Well, it's up to 600. It was they kept collecting them. It's close to 600,000. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know.
And they're sitting on her desk, and she's doing nothing about it. Well, she's not gonna.
Right.
That's why the legislature that we want to push. So basically, this goes into our basically our last point is calling your senator, your state senator, and your state representative, and putting the pressure on them to, mandate or force
a forensic audit.
Yeah. And if you don't know, there's lots of resources. I mean, Kevin Daly is our state senator. Gary Howell's our state representative. People, you really need to know your districts. You need to know who your elected officials are.
I have a question, though. How can you put the confidence in people that calling their state reps, their senators, is going to do anything? Because we did that with the Unlock Michigan thing. We did that with them. We had many calls to action, to call your state rep and say this, call your senator and say this. And I think, and realistically, it's done nothing.
Right.
Or at least we feel like it's done nothing, because look at where we're at. Whitmer just came out today and said what? Another 12 days
more weeks, right,
of a pause. Now we're calling a lockdown a pause, okay, where these businesses are being destroyed, and so we need to, is there a way to put the confidence back in people that it does do something to contact our state reps?
It does do something. The problem is not enough people do it. So, I mean, we know dozens of people that don't know who their state reps are,
right?
Don't know who their senators are. Mm-hmm. And when you start calling these people day in, day out, find them on Twitter, Facebook message them. I mean, blow these people up. Go to their houses. Organize a rally if you live down in Oakland County, whatever district you're in, and say, hey, let's 10 of us go over here with a bullhorn and make them uncomfortable, make them do their jobs. We're paying you $73,000 a year to represent us. You are not representing us.
But let's touch on this for a second, though, too. The deep state. Okay?
Yeah, that's a whole other.
The deep state, I think, has a little bit of ball and chain on these people.
Right.
So who are they more afraid of?
Well, exactly.
We can go to their house, we can do this and we can do that. But, who are they more afraid of?
Well, think of it this way. So do a gun count on the left. The people of, let's say if you've got a society that's 50% Democrats, 50%
they don't like guns,
Republicans.
So they have zero.
Right. So do a gun count on the left and then do a gun count on the right. If you don't give us what we want, and I shouldn't say what we want, what is right, I just don't see it. If our state representatives don't do anything.
When have us conservatives ever pulled out our weapons and said, you'll do it.
Well,
you'll do the right thing.
Right.
Because what have we done time and time again, which is why we're here today.
Right.
We've just rolled over. We've just accepted it.
Well, we're not.
Okay, it's defeat, and that's what they expect. So that's why they're not afraid of us. They're more afraid of the deep state who has, doorknobbed people,
Right.
I mean, yeah, we don't know for sure, but I mean, look at what they did to General Flynn.
Yeah, you can't deny that.
George Papadopoulos.
Right.
They've tried to just
serve time in prison,
these people's lives. Look what they're doing. They're trying to do to the people that have testified. Melissa Carone said herself, I can't get a job. She had to move, change her phone number, take off her social media.
Right.
She had to take all that stuff down. They destroy people's lives. And how even more would they destroy a senator's life or a state rep's life? Because they blackmail them.
Right.
They blackmail them. They back you into a corner. So
that's a moral issue. I mean, that's
right. But that's where the issue comes in, where people are like, man, is there anything that we can do? Because they're more afraid of the deep state than they are us, because they know at the end of the day, or they think at the end of the day, because that's been the history since. I mean, when have we ever risen up since the Civil War?
Right.
We haven't.
Well, we didn't rise up in the Civil War. That was
the Revolutionary War.
Yeah, right. 1776, right in the 1700s.
But that wasn't really against our government, because it
was against Great Britain, who was our government when we came over here.
They weren't our government. We came over here and
get away from them.
But this wasn't their land.
Right.
They couldn't govern a land that's not theirs.
Well, they tried to.
Right. They tried to.
Technically, we were just citizens of that country when we came over here. Remember, we watched that whole thing with Kirk Cameron, and so the biggest thing, we're not at the point of armed rebellion now. I mean, when your vote really doesn't count, and when it is so corrupt, I mean, the only real chance we have right now is this forensic audit. You got to call your senators, state senators, not your Congress people, not Lisa McClain, not Debbie Stabenow, Gary Petos. Those are federal people, yeah. State. Look it up. There's 110 state reps in the state of Michigan, 110 districts, 110 reps, and there's 38 state senators. So, calling them, and that's the biggest thing is, we've were to this point because people haven't been involved. It's easy just to go vote, but you don't even know.
Were. I think during the Unlock Michigan, I think those state reps and senators got more calls than they ever have in their entire lives.
Right.
So I believe and I think that sent a message.
Right.
Their voicemail boxes were full. They said, please stop calling us.
Right.
I mean, we flooded their emails. We flooded their.
But that also helped getting the Supreme Court ruling too. But, when you sidestep that, I mean, you can't just remove an elected official. You have to go through a process. And they have started an impeachment process, which is sponsored by Matt Maddock. So, biggest thing I'd say is call your senators, call your state representatives, and put I have that term, I hate that, put pressure on them. But what else can you do? You got to call them, because that's. But
what do you want them to say? The point is to tell them what we want. Okay, it's okay. We can't just say call them and tell them we demand a forensic audit of this election.
Exactly.
Across the state.
Right.
Across the entire state. And it's their responsibility to make sure it happens.
Right.
That's your call to action. I hate to unlock Michigan's verbiage, but yeah. Demand a legal forensic audit of all the votes in the state. Call your state representatives and your senators.